Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. My husband's coming back tomorrow.
That's exciting.
Yes, it is. I'm very, very grateful.
How's your dad doing?
Much better, thank
Yeah,
God.
good.
And he still keeps getting these urinary tract infections. They're not sure what's the cause, if it might be he had prostate cancer a bunch of years ago, if there's maybe, something left from that, or one day at a time, one step at a time. But getting my husband home is first step to me actually ever making it to New York to see him. So
Okay, that's good.
L'chaim, Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam she'akol nihye b'varo.
I mean,
Mm. And what an amazing thing to celebrate. We have Shavuos this week. We got the return of four Chatufim.
I was incredible
Um,
situation for job. Wow.
husband's coming home. Anything good to celebrate on your end? Something we can celebrate with bitachon?
Yeah, my daughter, after 3 weeks, feels good enough to go home and start her family with her new baby.
Wow.
So, Baruch
Wow.
Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
She had a tough time, but thank God she's doing good.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, well, you and I are going to get started on time, and people will join as they join.
Amazing.
So we are on page 79, starting
Yep.
chapter 3,
Got it all bookmarked
Elpei
right here.
as the Hirut. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to start with the Ramchal. And remember, for everybody who's watching the recording, first we begin with the Ramchal, the original text of Mesilat Yesharim, the Path of the Just. Then we go through Rabbi Twersky's commentary, and then we give our own commentary, discussion, and then continue to the next point.
You saw that I
Um,
might have to do that in a half hour if you pitched you up.
okay,
Okay.
you got it.
He's called. They're coming from Beit Shemesh, so we'll see.
Yay.
Okay.
One who wishes to exercise watchfulness must consider two things. One, what is true good one should choose, and what is the true evil one should avoid? Which actions fall under good and which actions fall under evil? This is like the most relevant thing possible. I can't wait to discuss it in a minute.
Yes.
Ramchal has said that faulty behavior results not so much from improper thought as from failure to think at all. Allowing oneself to act according to habit without deliberating about one's behavior. He now expands on this, stating that deliberation is comprised of two components. What is it I wish to do? And what is the method to achieve this?
Oh,
I
this
once
is
spotted,
okay.
mm-hmm, yes, I once bought an item and paid for it with $100 bill. The merchant ran the bill through the little apparatus to make certain it was genuine and not counterfeit. He explained there were some counterfeit $100 bills in circulation that were exact copies, and it was virtually impossible to distinguish between the two by a visual inspection. We may sometimes believe that we are doing what is right and proper because we have rationalized our behavior, having convinced ourselves that what we wanted to do was indeed correct. There is a difference between genuine good and counterfeit good, and we would do well to run our behavior through a filter, an apparatus to distinguish between the two. Such an apparatus consists of another person who, being free of our personal bias, is capable of rendering an objective evaluation. And whether it's in our health, and keeping, like, I really am working on this new project about a food journal, and helping people unpack all the stumbling blocks to using a food journal, because it's really about falling in love with yourself and full visibility and full accountability and full unconditional love. And what he's saying here is that in the end, we always need another person's feedback to tell whether we're doing good or counterfeit good. And your girlfriends or a group like this can provide that. Really good friends who aren't just going to yes you, but like
Okay.
you're going to say the whole story and they're going to be like, you were here, here, here. You were totally right there. Like you could have said that differently. You could have behaved differently. You could look at that differently. And we need those kind of people, because he's saying it's completely natural that even once you start thinking, our thinking can go to rationalize what we want
Of course.
versus, do what's right. So these two considerations, analysis and choice of method, should be applied both before taking action and afterward. Before taking action, so that one does not act without careful deliberation, and then after taking action to review one's behavior and see what kinds of things one did that should be repeated and reinforced, and what kinds of things were wrong and that should be avoided. I want to interject one thing here that I heard this past week that's really, really beautiful. Non-Jews look at the ROI, the return on investment. Okay. They're doing their marketing, they're doing their behaviors, they're doing their dieting, they're doing whatever they're doing. And they're looking at the outcome and assessing whether the behavior was worthwhile. A Jew looks at their behavior and looks at the results after their behavior, not of the outcome, but was the results showing that I'm in alignment with my values and the Torah? Was this behavior, regardless of outcome, good for its own sake? Because we know that the outcome's not in our hands. And so we can't judge whether the immediate marketing plan was effective based on the next sales. We can't do that. We have to look and say, okay, in this marketing plan, was I honest? Was I authentic? Was I helping people? Was I calling them to action because I'm thinking about my mortgage or because I want to help them and I know they need this? Like, we have to check in with our intention and our methods. Am I doing this honestly? Am I doing this with integrity? Versus just looking at the outcome. Same thing with our eating, same thing with our relationships, right? It's so easy. We want, and the whole world around us of the non-Jewish world is telling us, well, look at your outcome. And I'm saying this to myself right now. You don't even know how much. Look at the outcome. Are you getting the outcome you want? If you're not getting the outcome you want, then maybe you weren't doing it the right way.
We're not supposed to say that.
But we're not supposed to say that. We're supposed to say, look at your behavior. Was your behavior beautiful and compassionate and loving and nuanced and disciplined and in line with Torah values? Then the outcome that is best for you, that you can rely on Hashem, even if it doesn't look like you're getting what you want right now. Increase your bitachon, increase the effort in being miduyak with your behavior and your attitude and your way you're approaching this. The outcome is irrelevant because not in our control.
Right.
It's predetermined. And all the causes that are leading up to this are in order for us to get the outcome that we want if we open up to receive it. So, for example, you can say, well, I didn't lose any weight. Okay, but was I eating more vegetables? Okay, yes. Was I drinking more water? Okay, but was I doing it in like a negative, deprived, resentful way? Oh, okay, that's a mindset shift I need to work on. Independent of did I get the result I want? Because it could be I got the result, but I still need to be looking at my behavior before and after and saying, am I going about it the right way? Because that's the only thing that a Jew knows that they're in control of, is how they're going about it.
It's a major shift.
So does the end justify the means?
No.
Lala, you're back. Hi.
And you look stunning. Oh my God. Wow.
It's because you're in pink and red too. Thank you.
I know, right? We have the best aligned energy.
That color looks gorgeous on you.
Thank you.
Exactly. A Jew never believes that the ends justify the means because the ends aren't in our control. We only care about the means.
Okay.
So is my means in integrity? Because the outcome's not in my control. So how's my means?
My husband tells me this every Erev Shabbos. I'm like, oh my God, it's almost time for oh my gosh, it's not going to get to, oh my gosh, goes Esther Bracha. You're going to get to Shabbos. Every week you get to Shabbos. The question is, how are you going to get to Shabbos?
And we can either look at that as this pressure that's coming down on us, or we look at it as the most beautiful promise. And Shavuos is the marriage of God to the Jewish people. And so I said, we're going to talk about Shavuos during this whole class. And it's like this eternal promise that I'm 100% committed to you and committing to this relationship no matter what. Now that means that you're stuck with him, even in your worst space, right? Like
today's my anniversary. I got married.
Amazing. But also, he's not leaving. Doesn't matter how much you messed up. He's there waiting for you to improve. He's there sending you love, holding space. And so we got to keep the outside world is telling us outcome, outcome, outcome. And we got to say means. Whatever means are the right means, we have to do it no matter what the outcome is going to be. Yep. Okay. And I'm saying this again, very much
So
to
not
myself.
a Jewish thing by all means necessary because you're thinking of the outcome.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so what we say is in the service of God with all strength and koach, and then we sit, right? He's our rock. And I heard something beautiful. Why does it say that he's our rock? Because a rock is your shade, like your protection, even when it's passive. Like, even if you feel like you're not having a good relationship with God right now, the rock is still going to, the overhang rock is still going to protect you. It's not like, oh, well, I don't have a good relationship with the rock right now. The rock's there. It's protecting you no matter what. All you have to do is step under it. And I will tell you guys, I had such a few weeks this month, really, really, really challenging. And one of the visualizations that really, really got me through is I imagined myself in the middle of a desert, right? And I'm under the palm tree, right? God's the palm tree. Under the palm tree, it's safe. And I keep staring at the desert. And it's like, in the movies where like kind of goes hazy and you start to walk into the desert. And I'm like, no, turn around, get back under the palm tree and turn around. If you turn around, there's like a lush, verdant forest. If you just go into the palm tree, like there's waterfalls and stuff, stop looking at the desert, because you're just going to end up walking into the desert. Start looking at the palm trees and you're going to stay under the palm trees. And I felt like last 2 weeks were just like, oh, shoot, I'm getting sunburned. Walk back under the palm tree, back into the shade, back into the shade. And that's what this work is, right? Is like, oh, I'm supposed to think about my actions before I do them. I'm supposed to think about my actions after I do them. And it's tiring when we think about it and we're looking at the desert. But when we're looking at the lush, verdant, like island paradise on the other side of us, when we turn around and we live God in control and we work on our actions, then it's not hard to look at your actions in a paradise. It's really hard to look at them in a desert, right? Because it feels like what the world is telling you, that any means, right? Any means justify getting yourself out of there. But if all that you have to do is turn around, like, you're not helping yourself by going in the wrong direction. Okay.
I heard a class this week. It was called the Amuna moment. And it was talking about how it was an interesting definition of Amuna that I had never heard. It was basically, instead of looking in the past and instead of worrying about the future, be literally. And in the Amuna means the moment you're in is where exactly Hashem wants you to be. So you need to figure out in that moment how to connect. The past at that moment doesn't matter, and the future doesn't matter at that moment. It's you're connecting and understanding that where you are is where you're supposed to be.
Eckhart Tolle, a very famous spiritual, writer. He's not, I don't think he's Jewish, but he talks about this also. And he says, anxiety is the future, depression is the past, peace is in the moment.
Wow.
So anytime you're feeling anxious, you're probably anticipating the future. And anytime you're feeling depressed, you're regretting something, feeling something about the past. But in the present, we're all taken care of. We're all in our bitachon, because like we're all breathing, we're all living, we're all, So I really love that. Okay, we are on page 80. Deliberating on our actions in this manner might appear to be excessive, right? But let's think as to whether we do not already do so when we are confronted with decisions that are important to us. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev once visited a small town in the morning. A congregant approached him and asking, "Are you perhaps the shochet, the ritual slaughterer?" And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak said that indeed he was. "How wonderful," he said. "You are a godsend. I'm a butcher and I have a sickly cow. My regular shochet will not be here for 2 more days. And if the cow dies by then, I will lose a lot of money." Rabbi Levi Yitzchak said he would perform the ritual slaughter. But first he said, "I have a favor to ask. I'm traveling around to raise money for my daughter's dowry. Perhaps you can lend me 50 rubles. I assure you I will repay you." "What?" the man exclaimed. "Do you expect me to lend you so large a sum to someone I don't even know? Listen to what you just said. You are perfectly willing me to trust me as your shochet. And if I'm not a competent shochet, you will be feeding treif meat to all your customers. Yet my word is good enough for this, but it's not good enough to trust me with money. Clearly your spiritual values and your material values are reversed in priority." The Ramchal asks of all of us that we give the same consideration to the ethical right and wrong as we do give to economic right and wrong. We exercise much more prudence when our money is at risk, and we should be no less cautious when our spirituality is at risk.
It's true.
Our sages say that it would have been better if man would never have been created, because he's prone to mistakes and vice much more than virtue. But inasmuch as he's created, let him examine his deeds. But the other version of this, let him analyze his deeds. To examine one's deeds means to search whether or not we may have committed transgressions which should be eliminated. To analyze one's deeds means to see whether the good deeds that one has done were performed with a proper attitude and dedication. Spirituality is more than just avoiding evil, and even more than doing good. It means to do good in the optimum way, with pure intention, with the desire that these good deeds exert a salutary effect on one's character. Two Chassidim were discussing the quality of their spirituality and how they will appear before the tribunal on Judgment Day. Woe is to me, said the first Chassid, I will be found to have committed many sins. That is not my fear, said the Chassid. I will plead that I was simply unable to withstand the enormous pressures of temptation exerted on me by the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. What I am afraid of, he continued, is not my sins, but my mitzvot, my virtues. Why didn't I perform them properly? When I prayed and studied, why did my mind wander to extraneous matters? Why did I do mitzvot as rote? Why did I do some mitzvot for ostentatious, just to impress other people with my piety? Discriminating consumers carefully analyze the quality of an item they wish to purchase. Mitzvot choose to be of the finest quality. Failure to maximize performance of a mitzvah is a dereliction. The Hasidic master, the seer of Lublin, was returning from Tashlach, the ritual where we symbolically dispose of our improper acts by casting them in the water, when he met his disciple, Rabbi Naphtali of Roshvitz. Where are you going, the master asked. Down to the river, said Rabbi Naphtali, to retrieve the sins that the master has discarded. In other words, the spirituality of the seer was so great that he considered some of the mitzvot he had performed to be defective because they were not of the highest quality. Whereas Rabbi Naphtali, the spirituality that the master rejected would have been an achievement, inasmuch as clothes discarded by wealthy people, which the poor would consider to be valuable acquisitions. Okay, and again, I want to keep, we have to balance the Misiosi Sharim with the Shar Bitachon and understand you can't have one without the other, right? We can't read this without knowing that with Bitachon and our complete reliance on the goodness of God, we have the grace and patience to improve without pressure, or only with just the right amount of pressure that we already apply to ourselves in areas that are not our spiritual well-being, right? And so when we approach money or our health or our weight or aesthetics or our stature in the community or our relationships, right? From a place of, hey, I'm spend so much time worrying about how this person sees me and what they're thinking of me and da-da-da-da, right? The same amount of energy that we're giving to these other things, that's how much we should ask of ourselves to work to shift to our spiritual relationships. So, okay, I worry, whatever our worry is, right? Also, our worries are God-given because they're the tools to come close and to heal and to get to this place. That's what we're analyzing. What are my wounds, right? What are my childhood traumas? What are my wounds? What's my stumbling blocks? What's shaping the way I go about how I eat? Whether it's kashrut or it's making a blessing or it's health, whatever aspect of eating I want to improve, I want to think about something I already spend a lot of time on about my food, right? So maybe I spend, go ahead.
Finish.
So maybe I spend a lot of time worrying about the heat and the preparation and how it looks on the table or whatever it is that already speaks to me on a physical level. Okay, that much effort, I'm going to pick a spiritual side. I'm going to put an equal amount of effort into channeling that energy into a spiritual place because God is giving me the good either way. I'm only responsible for the quality of my side of the street, my relationship with him, because his relationship with me is constant good coming all the time. And that's why we can trust him while we work on ourselves. But any lack of trust that he's going to be there to support us unconditionally and love us and do good to us makes taking the time to look at our behavior impossible. There's too much pressure to get done everything else right now. And this is too hard. And it impacts our worthiness and our self-criticism and our self-judgment too much. And so we have to cultivate that bitachon, that inner sense of immense feeling of God's love and compassion and love for us unconditionally so that we can give ourselves space to think deeply about our actions. Otherwise, we all want to avoid that level of self-criticism and self-judgment, in my opinion. Thoughts?
Yeah, I know somebody who we're talking about the spiritual and the physical. I know somebody personally who they have trouble staying up all night learning on Shavuos. So what they've done for many years now is that they keep a journal, like, we keep food journals, or I should, but you do, I know. They keep a daily journal as to the latest they stayed up for shtiyot, whether it's a game or the news or whatever it may be, the latest that they stayed up. And then right before Shavuos night, they look back at the journal, and the latest time that they stayed up for Narishkeit, that's until that they stay up a little bit past that for Shavuos learning, and then they go to sleep.
That's beautiful. That's exactly this.
Right.
That's exactly this of saying, okay, wherever I'm holding, I just want to shift that amount of energy and focus. Like if I'm somebody who's obsessive about checking my bank account, maybe I want to take that level of obsession and apply it to something that would be of positive spiritual import. Which I think is really cool. But again, the only way to not trigger that immense level of self-judgment and self-criticism that can come from looking over whether it's, how your spending habits are, or what you eat, or how you are, whenever you go to marriage counselor. I haven't done this, but this is something they say that they do, that if you go to a marriage counselor, they'll tell you to write down everything you said to each other or something like that, like how many criticisms or something. Like the only way you can ever do any of those things is if you feel safe enough.
Correct.
And the only way we're ever going to feel safe enough is by cultivating our bitachon. But the flip side to bitachon, that's accepting God's side of the street and receiving the good. And the same part is now, how do I behave?
That's how we were Nasav and Ishma.
Exactly. And so that's what Mesilas Yesharim is, to come fill in. Okay, we talked about, well, this is how a Baal bitachon, someone with bitachon, would behave. How do we get there? Mesilas Yesharim, this book comes to teach us what are the habits of a successful person in bitachon. Okay, page 82. A person should therefore regularly do a careful daily accounting, similar to merchants who constantly evaluate their business. Our sages say that those who have become masters of their physical temptations are those who say, let us calculate. What is the loss one may occur by performance of a mitzvah in comparison to the reward? What is the gain of a sin in comparison to the loss it entails? Proper guidance on how to live can be given only by people who have an accurate perception of reality. A person's perception is often distorted by his desires. In prohibiting a judge from accepting a bribe, the Torah says a bribe will blind the eyes of the wise. The Talmud states that anyone who has accepted a bribe cannot possibly avoid a bias, regardless of how much he tries to be objective. The distorting effect of a bribe can be so great that it can have an impact even if one is not aware of it. The Rabbi of Apt once sat on a trial in a rabbinical court, and after several days of proceedings, abruptly withdrew from the case without any explanation. The following Friday evening, by putting on his Shabbos kaftan, he had discovered an envelope with money that had been put there by one of the litigants. The rabbi then said, I could not understand what had happened, but in the midst of the proceeding, I felt myself constantly leaning toward one of the litigants. When I discovered the prize, I realized that my judgment had been distorted in his favor, and this had occurred even though I was not aware until much later that he had tried to bribe me. Such is the potency of a bribe, that it can affect a person's judgment even if one is not aware of it. Do you know they teach this to waiters?
Really?
In restaurants, that if you want a bigger tip, there are certain behaviors that you need to do that trigger this psychological response.
Cool.
And it's really interesting. You could be aware of it, you could not be aware of it, but they teach waiters these certain things like to ask and to do that literally equal a sense of reciprocity. Bye, Shulamit, we love you. The distorting, we are all bribed by our desires. Hence, we are blinded to reality because our perceptions may be distorted. We see things the way we want to see them, even if though the desire may be unconscious. Just as the Rabbi of Apt noted his judgment was affected by the bribe, of which he was totally unaware, so can our perception of reality be affected by desires or wounds or triggers that we are unaware of. Parents are often frustrated when they observe their children behaving in a self-defeating manner, making decisions that are detrimental to their own welfare. Recalling their own youth, they can recognize how intense desires can lead one to make unwise decisions. Even highly intelligent youngsters can be misled by personal drives. Parents try to counsel children, so often reject parental advice only to later regret their decisions. We should realize that even as mature adults, we are subject to similar distortions of perception and judgment, and accept guidance from those who are wiser and more experienced. And again, this is saying with compassion that this is everybody, the greatest rabbi to the lowest person. You need somebody who isn't you to help you filter where are you going wrong. In the Haggadah from Bond and Where Are You Right, right? Because sometimes then the Yetzer Hara tricks us and we're doing something right, and he comes in and tries to break our confidence that this thing that we're doing, we're actually right. I pointed out that often we feel nothing less than slaves to our internal drives. Just as a slave is not free to do things of his own choosing, neither are we free to make correct choices as long as we are dominated by physical drives or emotional traumas. It is only when we break loose from this domination that we are free to make proper choices. Okay. Great, we're doing great. Our sages say, you make darkness and it is night, whereby they compare living in this world to being in the darkness of night. This is an excellent metaphor, since darkness causes two problems in perception. Firstly, one is unable to see pitfalls and obstacles in one's way. And secondly, the shadows in the darkness may cause optical illusions, when one sees a pillar and thinks it to be a person, and vice versa. The first can result in a person falling to his destruction, being unaware of the pitfall before him. And the second is even more serious because one mistakes good for evil and evil for good, and thereby persists in self-defeating behavior, which one is convinced is good and proper. And this, I think, also ties back into the Shar Bitachon, because in the end, all we can do is our best. And it could be we are doing a self-defeating behavior, but we are doing it with the best of intentions. And I think we could all think of somebody in our life who is, we can see objectively right now they're doing that, right? Whether it's somewhere in our world, we can see somebody doing that, but we can't ever see ourselves doing it. And we just have to accept that we'll never see ourselves falling into that pattern unless, number one, he said, we choose to look, and number two, we choose to get outside perspective.
But we are falling into that pattern. We just don't realize it, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Okay. All of us are falling into that pattern somewhere in our life all the time.
Okay.
So accept it, but don't accept that that's how it's always going to be. Some area of my life, I can always be improving through starting to take a daily assessment of where I'm struggling, or where I feel like I'm not sure if I'm doing right or wrong, or I'm sure I'm doing right, even more reason to check, or I'm sure I'm doing wrong, more reason to check, and then move forward. Because in
so the more
end,
confident you are, you should be checking more often.
I think that if we're really confident, we should check and then leave the confidence if we get told that we're right, and then check. He said, just each day, like just do a check-in, like where am I strong? Where am I? Because one day we can have the same conversation with somebody and we can be in that space of bitachon and hitting and doing it with love and compassion. And the next day our ego can get in there and like it's messy, but life is messy. That's why we have to just look over our behavior without this focus of judgment and self-criticism, instead of meticulousness from doing something you love, right? Like expertise. When someone who's super into baking is meticulous in their ingredients. So we want to be super into our relationship with God so that the meticulousness that's being asked of us is joyful and not punitive. And that's why we have to keep going back between Shar Bitachon and Mesilas Yesharim. Whenever we feel like this is getting super negative, we're going to go back to Shar Bitachon and be like, well, why do I even care about this relationship? Why do I want to get this date night with God perfect? Because I love him so much and he loves me so much. So it's worth the mess of figuring out, right, where I'm going wrong or what I'm doing right. Because the relationship is worth it.
Shar Bitachon are the points. I'm looking at it as like the ABCs of an outline, and Mesilas Yesharim is the 1, 2, 3s, giving us the exact pinpoints on how to carry it out.
Right, but we have to keep going back, because when you have a to-do list with no context, there's no fulfillment or meaning. And when you have context but nothing to do that's concrete, you don't really make progress. So that's why we need both, and we need to keep flipping back and forth. The reason why Ramchal considers the second era more serious than the first is if one stumbles in the dark and is injured, he realizes it and he's likely to change his behavior and not get hurt again. Therefore, page 84 on the bottom, one who thinks he can see what's before him but actually misperceives reality may not be fortunate to be brought to his senses so quickly. And this is where, when something bad happens and we hit a stumbling block and there's a negative, like, uh-oh, I made a mistake in how I behaved, it's really a gift because the worst thing would be to keep behaving that way and be convinced we're doing it right instead of getting like a course correction.
Right. Correct. You're right. It's a good way to look at it.
So a classic example of two maladjustments the Ramchal describes is the addicted person. We may think of addiction as restricted to habitual use of alcohol and drugs, but the phenomenon of addiction is much broader, including addiction to food, work, gambling, power, and acclaim. Addictive behavior is categorized by denial, typically observed in the alcoholic whose drinking is grossly destructive. While this is obvious to everyone else, the alcoholic may be completely oblivious to its ramifications. The second phenomenon occurs when the addiction results in a distortion of thought, feeling, and judgment, which I describe in addictive thinking. An addict is capable of the most complex and even bizarre rationalizations, which he thoroughly believes to be true. Like someone in the dark who mistakes a pillar for a person and shoots at the pillar under the assumption that it is a hostile aggressor. The addict may see enemies where none exist, just as in the darkness one may fail to recognize a hostile foe, assuming him to be a pillar or a tree. So in addiction, one may not see danger signals, maybe think harmful things are beneficial. Countless people have gone to ruin and taken others with them because they were operating in darkness. An inability to appreciate it, to perceive reality correctly as a result of the dominance of their internal drives.
That's intense.
Very intense, which is why we switch back to Shar B'Tachon and we say, we live in a world where there is darkness and we don't know what is right and what is wrong, but we are in a hallway to a place of immense light and goodness. And even in the darkness, there are helpmates and signposts. And all we need to do is recognize that we're in darkness and help and ask for help from Hashem and rely on him.
I'm still here. I'm just saying that it was too interesting for me to put it down, even though I'm supposed to be cooking and eating dinner. So I'm doing it on the side. But I really love this. And it's beautiful, the comments that you made just now. Was it Esther Brocha? I don't remember. But it's about, like, for me, I remember this whole discourse between Rabbi Sachs, late Rabbi Sachs, Alav Shalom, and this famous, we can call him an Epicurus, he's an atheist. Was it Richard Dawkins? Is that his name? Can't remember. And he was saying, look, there's no contradiction between Torah and science, but the one is the how and the other is the why. And it's sort of, in a way, it's similar. The Mesilas Yesharim is how, and perhaps you could look at the Shar HaBitachon as the why, you know? I mean, it's not like Shar HaBitachon also tells you how, but it's how to do the why kind of thing. So it's the reason, like when I'm coach, you know, I've been taught so many different tools and methods, and you're also, so I'm sure you're familiar with all these psychotherapy tools and motivational tools and mindset tools. But at the end of the day, if someone is really depressed or anxious and they don't want to live or they don't want to do the thing, there has to be a reason that they're doing that. And if you don't have a higher power in your life, then it's very difficult to conquer addiction. And that's how the Alcoholic Anonymous, I can't pronounce it, the AA groups got to be so successful, because they make you have a higher power. Even if you're not religious, you've got to believe in something more than yourself. So otherwise, if you don't have a reason, you can have all the tools in the world, you're not going to want to use them. So I think underlying everything has got to be emunah. Yeah.
100%. And that's why this is so powerful and why it's everything that we need right now to get through what we're going through right now and get to Mashiach Be'ezrat Hashem and into what we're supposed to be really doing as a nation and filling the world with light. But the only way to get there is to constantly be navigating this darkness, holding in one hand this complete trust, and keep removing our reliance on the government, on people, on things, on foreign government. Keep returning to our reliance on Hashem and go through the motions, checking our actions. Are we doing this the right way? Is this the right way to think? Have we gotten off track with our thinking? You know, how do we have more checks and balances in our system? Because we need every single piece of our society to check another piece of our society. That's why we have such a variety of society, is because there has to be a checks and balances of each side, bringing counterpoints and bringing out the light of the other side. You know, and hopefully we will get there. You know, what we're doing today helps to fix the world, even if it's just as we fix ourselves. It's impacting the world. And we see that through Shavuot, every single individual mattered, and every single individual had a personal interaction with Hashem as much as we had a national, interaction. We are page 85. Living in this world may be compared to a maze where there are numerous paths, many of which are confusing and interlacing, and all of which appear similar. The goal is to reach a portico in its midst. Some of the paths indeed lead to the goal, while others are deceptive and lead away from the goal. However, one cannot tell which is which unless one has successfully mastered the maze and reached the portico. Someone standing on the top of the portico has a view of all the paths, which are true and which are deceptive, and he can call to those who enter the maze, follow this path, avoid this one. One who heeds this guide will soon arrive at the goal, and one who persists in pursuing his own intellect will blunder and may never arrive at the goal. Page 86. My work as a psychiatrist has enabled me to appreciate the accuracy of the Ramchal's metaphor. The world is indeed very much like a maze, with more paths leading to dead ends or away from the goal than towards it. There are many people who, by virtue of their experience and knowledge, can point out paths which should be avoided and what kinds of behaviors are self-defeating. A wise person will take advantage of this wisdom and experience and avoid at least some erroneous ways which are pointed out to him. Those who are intoxicated with their own intelligence and refuse guidance are likely to follow paths that lead nowhere. Of course, the validity of the metaphor is based on the premise that there is a goal to be reached, which the Ramchal discussed in chapter 1. There are those who have never chosen a goal, and others who believe that there is no ultimate goal. The latter's only motivation may be to eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Ironically, even hedonism is deceptive because so many physical gratifications are but transitory pleasures whose consequences can be exceedingly painful for a long period of time. It is characteristic of the pleasure-driven person that he scorns wise direction, doing only that which he believes will give him immediate gratification. It is only when he begins to suffer the consequences of his behavior that he may seek guidance. While it is never too late to correct one's errant ways, much of the harm has been done to oneself and to others cannot be undone even after one has awakened to the truth. A person who has wandered aimlessly through the maze after being totally exhausted finally surrenders and heeds the instructions of the guide on the portico, may ultimately arrive at the goal, but he may then be old and weary and may have lost many opportunities while engaged in his futile efforts.
That's so sad.
I know, it's very sad. And unfortunately, we can all know people who are miserable and, because they never developed their relationships, or they, made everything about money and never, and it's unfortunately true. And we need to be called to it, because if we live in the, I'm all about positivity, but if we live in a space where everybody gets the unicorns and the rainbow sprinkles, we're not living honestly, going to look enough hard at our actions to be motivated to avoid the pain of a life, that's so exhausting, because we made it so difficult on ourselves. In my rehabilitation,
Can I just ask you, the last,
please.
Yeah, so no, maybe it's a comment, but what's coming to me in this whole last bit that you've been doing is the saying of, I think it's in Pirkei Avos, "Aseh lecha rav, kneh lecha chaver." None of us can do this on our own. I'm a coach, I've been through all the training, but if I don't have my own coach, I can't see my own patterns. No one can. And I think "Aseh lecha rav" means you've got to make yourself a rav and have one person that you go to who's your guidance. I've got Rebbetzin that I go to when I'm stuck, I'm not sure what to do. Like, there's lots of different people in my life, but you should have one consistent authority that you know is guided by Hashem, like, a Torah authority. But apart from that person's not going to be available, right? In the same way that a chaver is to me more like an equal, like a good friend or a coach or someone who really has your back. And that requires kneh. It doesn't necessarily only mean with money. It means you've got to work at that to get that type of friendship. So
Very nice.
I think you need both, because it is a maze life and none of us can see. And that's why I think Hashem made us a community, so that we can help each other. So we not think of ourselves as whole. In fact, even in this week's Sedra, we had to count everybody. You had to count a half a shekel to show that none of us are a whole shekel.
That's right. I had a great, on Shabbat, I was playing cards with my 8-year-old and my 12-year-old. And I was in the middle. So it was like the 8-year-old's turn, then the 12-year-old's turn, then my turn. And they were getting frustrated that I was winning. And so they decided that they're going to help each other. They're going to cheat by giving each other the cards that they need. And they're like, no, but we love you, Mom. And we just, and I was like, right. But nothing made me happier. I could have spent hours playing while watching them try to help each other, win the game at my expense, please. That's how God feels all the time, right? Like he puts his own ego aside and is like, oh, you children want to help each other? That's the most important. That brings him the most pleasure, but you're going to fight over who's right? Not interested, you know? Who does mommy love more? No, I want to see you two team up and make each other happy and make each other better and stronger and brighter. And that's what I think also Kanelecha Chaver is find someone who you're so invested in them being successful that it's like your success. When you see a friend suffering and like it's like you're suffering and you see them succeeding, it's like you're succeeding. We're finishing chapter 3 right now, and then we'll continue our discussion the last 10 minutes. In my rehabilitation center, we have a section for adults and one for adolescents. The people in the older group have gone through the myriad of miseries of addiction, having themselves suffered greatly and inflicted suffering on others, particularly on those they love most. The younger group have generally come to our attention as a result of their parents discovering that they are using drugs or a result of running afoul of the law. As a rule, they are too young to have experienced many of the painful consequences of the older group. The older people often look at the younger ones and say, I wish someone would have intervened in my life when I was 16. I would have avoided 2 unsuccessful marriages, loss of numerous jobs, much damage to my body. How lucky these young ones are. One might think the younger ones One might think the younger ones would listen to these people who tell them, don't be foolish, don't do what I did, listen to your counselor. I wish I'd been given the opportunity. But alas, youth is often impetuous. And instead of learning from the mistakes of others, they say it won't happen to me. In all walks of life, there are those who stand on the top of the portico from their vantage point can point to the right path. Those who are wise will listen.
But that doesn't work. Even we tell our kids, or we know, listen to, whatever, listen to us. We've been there, done that. And then they become, I know when my kids were teens, I called my mother. I'm like, I'm so sorry for starting up with my brother and sister. I'm so sorry. And she's laughing away. Like, it's normal.
So how do we do it differently? By constantly opening ourselves up to doing what we're doing right now, is learn when we learn from a book like this and we do it in a group and we hear each other's perspective and everyone coming from their own place in the spectrum of everything. So we're able to, first of all, lean on this Rav Aselecha Rav, like Shulamit so beautifully said, and have a true friendship, right? Because no, we're not sharing like what we had for dinner and sharing selfies of like, our puppies and our swimming pool, but like, we're talking about the most real stuff there is.
Right.
So takeaways from chapter 3, insights that you had today. Anybody want to start?
Yeah. A friend once explained the concept of bitachon, and I now, it made sense what they said, but it really fits in with what you said here about our efforts and trying, but the outcome is not, but yet we still have to pay attention to how we're doing it. They described that there's this huge jigsaw puzzle and that we know what the picture looks like on the box. We're aware of what the ultimate picture is supposed to look like. And every action that we do is taking a puzzle piece and trying it out in certain places. And sometimes it clicks right away in the right place. And other times you keep turning it around and switching it and flipping it and trying it in different places. And that's our job. Our job is to try to fit the pieces in. The ultimate goal, the puzzle will be done. And the picture will look like the picture you have on the box, but it's not going to come so easily. And you have to try all different ways to get it to work. And I heard what he said and I understood what they said, but this really solidified it for me. I think I really understand that it's not just doing, but it's thinking through the doing and seeing how it fits and not just taking a random piece and saying, oh, there's pink here, let's try it here. It's more of, oh, there's pink and red and black, and it's on this part, and this part of the picture has it, and this one doesn't. And you have to think in order to make the picture happen. You can't just randomly say, oh, I'll try it and see if it fits here.
Yes. And I'm going to point out one other thing. There's a great story in the Daily Bitachon book by Rabbi Sutton. He talks about that, I forgot what rabbi it is. He gave this shir on Bitachon, and he talked about how if you rely on Hashem, You don't even have to do Ishtadlut. Like if your level of reliance is so much that you were just 100%, and this very simple man, is a kind of true story that's in the Gemara, goes home and he sells his donkey and his wife and his family, and they're beside themselves. They're like, oh my God, this is our only livelihood. Like, what are you doing? He's like, no, the rabbi promised that if I only rely on Hashem and I really only rely on him, I don't have to work anymore. And I'm just going to stay to him and learn all day.
That's
This
the
is a
thing.
simple man, okay? Simple man. Never really spent much time learning, but he had made the effort to go to the rabbi shir and, simple. The non-Jew bought the donkey, and he, his family, his wife, they're all despairing. They're all like, oh my God, they're going to the rabbi. They're like trying to figure out what to do to get this guy back, working. And this non-Jew bought the donkey, and he is using the donkey, and he's digging, and he discovers a treasure. Puts the treasure on the donkey, gets on the donkey, he's going through, and like there's a storm, a rock hits him, he falls over dead. The donkey goes back to its place it's lived its whole life, walks into the guy's house with a treasure, and he's wealthy for the rest of his life. And all the yeshiva students come to the rabbi, and they're like, we have been learning bitachon in this class for 15 years. What the heck? How come this simple guy can come in and he gets it in 1 minute and he gets a treasure? I'm sitting here suffering in yeshiva, and I don't have this and I don't have this. He said, if you have a stake and you stick it in sand and you move it in and you stick it deep, it stays. It just stays. But if you stick it in the ground and then you're constantly moving it around and digging around it and analyzing it, and maybe I should stick it over here, or maybe I should stick it over here, it's not sticking in the ground where it's supposed to be. And so the more that we question and we get anxious and we're like, is this the right thing, or is this the right thing? Yeah.
Francie just walked in. Shavuot.
Shavuot
Shavuot,
tov.
some everybody. Good Yantiv. Shavuot tov.
Good
We'll see you
Yantiv.
next. Enjoy having your home.
Yes, amen. So just to finish the thought, he said, we are, because we're so knowledgeable, we're constantly questioning God. Am I worthy? Did I do it right enough? Did I work so hard? And so I want us to be careful when we're reading Mesilas Yesharim, and it says, evaluate your behavior, to not question your bitachon. The evaluating our behavior is like that meticulousness of the chef who loves the baking so much, who wants to just keep improving the recipe, but they trust that all the ingredients are going to be there. The recipe's going to come out great. They just know that like it's fun to keep perfecting it because it's joy and it's life and it's important, right? But again, if we're constantly questioning our worth or questioning God's love based on our mistakes, then our bitachon gets loosey-goosey, because we're never going to feel worthy, and we're not accepting, and we're not receiving everything good that God has for us. And so you really need both. We need to have that pure, complete reliance of the simple person, but that simple person didn't stay simple. He understood that saying I'm relying on God means I'm going to now spend the time I was doing earning a living to serving God with my efforts. So what we want to do is shift the effort we're putting into just more, random pursuits, and shift it also into our relationship with our spirituality. So, for example, if you love golfing and you spend a ton of time learning about golf and your golf swing and you play at the best courts and you're right? People who love golf, it's like a full-time job, okay? Or any hobby. And we said, instead, I'm going to take that same love and that same effort, and I want to cultivate that level of relationship with Hashem, right? So I want to think about the time that I spend with him in prayer. In the same way, I'm like gonna not have to give up golf, but the same way I like want to get my swing just right. And I'm willing to like sit and move around and figure it out. Maybe when I come in to pray, I want to like make sure my meditation space is like perfectly situated, and I want to keep improving it over time. And maybe I want to notice when I'm distracted all the time and I want to work on it, or I want to get a coach, right? Because a guy who loves golf definitely might pay a coach, right, to train him and to improve his swing. And I think it's taking this lighter, more playful, but serious dedication to these topics is really important, because I know for me, there's sometimes too much messaging that really triggers that like perfectionist, negative, question your worthiness thing when we talk about right and wrong and life and death. And sometimes that heaviness makes us avoid and like make us question, makes every tough one.
Action. You can't just stay in your mind, you have to get into action. And it's practice that makes it light and flowing and easy, because the first time you do anything, it's going to be a bit tricky and your mind will get a little bit caught up in, oh my God, am I doing it right? Is this the way I'm supposed to do it? But if you just do those little steps, day after day, and build it up. And I think coming to classes like this, learning like this is part of this thing, keeping up the consistency, then it becomes easier and lighter. Absolutely. And more flowing, so that you're not always stuck in the hole. How do I do that?
Recognizing that day to day, hour to hour, there's going to be an ebb and flow of your energy and your bitachon, right? Like, wow, after that class, I was doing amazing. 4 hours later, I was like, eh. So for me personally, I have like a few different areas where I work on my bitachon daily. Like I'm in a WhatsApp group that has like a little daily bitachon thing, and I have my bitachon I learn with my husband. And like at night, I have a page that I read. Like I have little different stops in the day. The same way when I was working on my relationship with drinking more water, I set timers in my phone throughout the day, because I could be doing great in the morning, and then like came 4 o'clock, I hadn't drinking anything in hours, until it became habit to always have my water bottle with me. Right? Like,
can I ask you something, because that's something that I've been struggling with. I used to, like during the whole period of COVID lockdown and a couple of years after that, I was busy studying all my therapies and practicing it and having my own clients. And now I've taken on another job, which is like a day job, and then I'm doing the coaching around that, just so that I have a stable income, and then I've got the one that can fluctuate and I don't put myself under pressure. And in theory it works, but actually in practice there's no time for anything that I normally like to call my go-to practices, the meditation, Shemona Esrei, Amida, forget it, that's gone out the window. My 1 o'clock to healing group, if I'm lucky, I hop on that at lunchtime, but usually there's a meeting. I'm losing like it's coming out of my grasp, and I'm sensing that's making a difference to my actual coaching, because unless I devote the time to myself, I'm not pure and clean when I come. And I wondered if you've got any advice or tips around that, because I'm finding it a bit of a struggle.
I think first is accepting that maybe there doesn't have to be a conflict, right? That like right now you've committed to this side job, and like just go through like a little bit and check yourself, like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this for the right reasons? If I'm doing it for the right reasons, then it's a part of my spiritual practice. If it's a part of my spiritual practice, what things within my workday, can I use to trigger more spiritual practices? Like if I have to get on a lot of Zooms, can I say a prayer before I get on each Zoom? Can I just say brachot with like a little extra kavana, while I'm doing this? Or can I, listen to something while I'm doing, data entry? Like, is there space if this is part of my practice? And then if it's not part of your practice and it's really just taking you away from your practice, write out maybe a job description with God and like negotiate, being like, okay, like I'm coming to you, you're the boss. These are the work conditions I need to be successful.
Yeah.
This is what I need.
I've been doing literally having chats with God, but he hasn't actually given me anything yet, but still hoping for something to drop in there. Maybe.
So there's hoping and there's relying, right?
Relying. Yeah, no, I mean, the reliance part would come into it where I'm thinking about even changing my surroundings, changing where I am, making aliyah, So we'll have a chat about that after.
So again, it's not overnight, and it might be some moments you feel that sense of peace that, oh my gosh, it's really on the way. Like it's on the way to me. And then there are times where you're going to feel like he's really not answering me. And it's navigating that. But every time that you shift back, that's the spiritual work. So in the short term, you can take the work you're doing and you can turn it into your spiritual work. But at the same time, you have to check in with, okay, maybe this is the disconnect I'm feeling is that sign that I stumbled over an obstacle that's completely legitimate. Is this a sign I stumbled over an obstacle? Or is it, that I think this is an obstacle, but really it's an opportunity? I'm not sure. Who could I talk to kind of figure that out, chalk that out?
Yeah, literally that. That's where I am.
And it's a good place to be because you're turning the lights on. You're recognizing you're in the dark. And instead of just keep going, right? You're like, okay, pause. Do some thinking. Like, and then, like you said, consult your Rebbitzin, consult a friend. I'm happy to hear more details or be there for you. And but in the end, you're the only one who can know. Like, we can question you and give you insight to yourself, but in the end, you're the only one who can make that decision. And then, write that job description to God and tell him what you want. And this is what I need. This is why I need it. And I'm not hoping that you're going to do it. I'm relying on you to do it.
Relying on you, yeah.
And I'm going to do this in the meantime while I wait for you to send it to me. But I know it's on the way. So I'm going to do this and this while I'm waiting. But I'm not doing this and this to just do it myself if you don't come through. This isn't my backup plan. This is just my I know it's good to be busy while I'm waiting. So this is what I'm doing. But I know that you are listening and you are going to send it.
Interestingly, I want to bookmark this for another chat with you also after, Lily. I know you and I wanted to get together writing some of this stuff up. Something that occurred to me, and I'm recollecting it now, is to examine and analyze the different levels of waiting for God, because there's lachakot, meyachalim Hashem, there is kaveh el Hashem, there's lachosim bo, so many different expressions of waiting. And I think there are different levels of reliance and different levels of emunah within those. So I think that could be something very fun for us to explore.
100%. Totally there. Stacy, did I see you come in? How are your beautiful grandbabies?
They are hanging in there. Oh, sorry, I thought my camera was on. Hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you all. I keep forgetting. I keep thinking that it's at 7 a.m. and I miss it. So I apologize. My grandbabies are getting there. My grandson has something on his stomach. I don't know they don't know what it is. They thought it was a abdominal infection or intestinal infection, which would have been really bad, but they tested for it and it's not. But there is a dark spot on his belly, and I guess that could be common. So right now it's a wait and see, but he's getting bigger, or they're going back to feeding him again. She's gotten very big. She drinks a lot, like 20 ounces at a time.
Amazing.
And I'm just
all the Tehillim, man. All the Tehillim. Anybody's not in that Tehillim group for Stacy's babies, go get in that Tehillim group. But
I know.
that, if that's not a bitachon moment of there was a black spot and it could have been this, and now it might just be something totally neutral,
Right.
that's amazing. Just
Right.
to all of us to take that into, Shavuos.
Right.
May it just continue to improve. And I hope a little bit of this learning we're going to dedicate to their refuah.
Thank you.
And our thoughts and our prayers are with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I just got really nervous. I saw a Middle Eastern guy stop on a bicycle and turn around and texting. And I'm just like, I can't worry.
Yeah.
So two things I picked up over Shabbos from somebody who spoke in Shul is that we have to be very extra careful the days before Shavuot. So do keep an eye. It's good that you are looking, because the Satan tries to get in the way of us receiving the Torah. But when it comes to actual Shavuot itself, when we go to the Shul, if you can make it to the Beit Knesset, it's even better to hear the Torah. During the time of reading the Torah, when we heard about the brakim and the kolot and the brakim, they were completely against nature. We were seeing the thunder and hearing the lightning. that is the time to pray for miracles. That is the time to pray for refuah or zibugim or everything that you want, because it's a time where the heaven is open for that. So it's a time of receiving it. So
Beautiful.
my blessing to you, that you should stay safe before Shavuot, make it to Shul, and we should all pray for each other and for ourselves, and we should receive miracles for ourselves and for the Klal. And all the hostages should come home. All of us. We should also, yeah.
Lala, anything to share from today? You always have such amazing insights.
Thank you. I don't know about that. I think like what Shulmeet was asking was one of the things that I have been calling on recently, and maybe not knowing exactly all of this, because I've had a period where my practice has been very off with everything happening. That I started about a month ago, right before I go to sleep, when you're kind of in that ways. I had a teacher, not someone Jewish, who's always talks about calling on the wise woman within. And for me, it's more calling within that piece of God, that, that the light that's in. And so that kind of started before I would go to bed, really for a few minutes, just as I'm dozing, like really calling on that inner light. And nothing kind of happened for about a week or so. I'm not sure how long, but I just made that my practice as I was going to bed. And I don't know when it was, but it was just like such a distinct message to me. Like, you already know the answer. Like not why are you asking, but it was the answer. It was like, you already know the answer. And I was like, oh, I actually do know the answer, and it was so interesting, because it was like, go back to something really basic, but it was just like, I already knew you already know the answer. And then it was just there.
Oh my God, that landed for me so much what you said. Thank you, Lala, because today I had a session with someone that I haven't seen in a while. It's an old client that came back, and part of me was just trying to be, I think it was in my ego, I was trying to prove that even in one session we could fix something, and that, I still had it, and that I wasn't this whole different person who's doing a different job now. And I got in my head and I was trying to think which tool, what words, and I could have just relaxed and just really listened to her more powerfully and reflected back to her in her own words, which is what she really needed, not me telling her my words. So it's just going back to that basic knowing that we all have already, and just relying that it's already there. You don't need to go searching for it outside of ourselves.
It was kind of that connection of just that all of a sudden, that heart brain thing that I just each night just kept saying, like, connect to that wise woman, connect to that light, inner light. And like, I just kept trying to connect to that just as I went to bed. 30 seconds to a minute. And then all of a sudden the answer came. And
that's exactly what he's talking about here, is at the end of the day, to take that minute and to try to listen for the answer, because, right, the people who are making the biggest mistake are the people who aren't asking the question.
I started to sleep. It's crazy. A month ago, I haven't slept in 10 years. All of a sudden, I just like started to sleep. It like brought me so much like stability. It was like that cord had been uncut, which seems kind of crazy, because I had a very sincere, dedicated practice for so long and wasn't sleeping during that. And so my practice has become so simple. It's just a minute or two at bedtime, just to like, I don't know. It's like almost I connect to the light, and then it just like embraces me. I almost feel like I'm bathed in it, and I just fall asleep so quickly. And it's wild. Even flying to Israel and all that. I didn't take any medication. I didn't take anything. I just like bathed myself in the light. And I don't know, it's been really, really helpful. I mean, I always say to my husband right now, I don't know why I have this very huge calm about me. I mean, Murray's in Raphael right now. I mean, I have this
Right.
bizarre.
That's bitachon. That's bitachon. He says exactly, it's the nervous system calm. And that's why we are so blessed to have Lala in our class. And it's really not about how much you know or how much you think you know. It's about really being open and asking and relying. Really, that's reliance. That's just so beautiful.
I feel like what else? That's the only option. Like, and so, but it's not like that's the only option. Like, it's the only option. It's more like that's the only option. It's like
Yeah, beautiful.
it's a
Very nice.
surrender, but in like a surrender to, you know, what is there
Yeah.
without knowing.
Surrender to the bigness of God, the greatness, not the littleness. Yeah, I like it. It's beautiful.
So beautiful. Oh my gosh, guys, this is the best joint learning. I can't wait next week, chapter 4. How are you guys enjoying this book? I know like it was interesting. It's a change from Chovot to Levavot, but I hope you guys see how they balance each other.
I'm laughing because I've never raced through it so quickly. Like when I did it with my son, it was like a sentence or two each time. And I'm like, wow, it's a lot. I think I have to listen to the recording a few times till it will all go in. But it's very nice, beautiful. Thank you so, so much. I wasn't going to stay on. I've got something directly after this.
I'm
I said
so
to
glad
myself,
you did.
Hashem also needs you to relax. You can just like have a half an hour just to yourself to eat your dinner. But I was like, no. I really want to hang on and watch Lily. This is relaxing me. That's good.
Good. And Stacy, we're sending you guys so much bracha for the babes and
you.
for everybody, that all of your prayers should feel answered already when you go into Shavuot. And that we should all feel that light, and that Lala should daven for us too, and send us a little bit of that calm, which sometimes we're blessed to feel and sometimes feel super far away. And we just have to keep coming back to it because, like she said, we know the answer is. And keep working. See you guys next Sunday.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Chag
Bye.
Sameach.
Chag
Oh yeah,
Sameach.
happy Yom Tov, Chag Sameach.